Thank you. So when you're forced to move back in with your mom at 30, you get desperate. Like desperate enough to take a job as a recruiter with ITT Technical Institute, an evil for-profit fake college that made the headlines last year when they were shut down overnight by the federal government. The Philadelphia campus was really just one floor of an empty office building with a bullpen of 15 assholes on telephones. And every day those assholes, including myself, were given a list of leads to call. About 10% of those leads were real, that came from people that visited the website after they saw a commercial on Maury or Jerry Springer. And those leads only went to the top recruiters who used to get rich on commissions before that was made illegal a few years ago. For the rest of us, we got leads that were purchased by a third-party agency who stole contact information from job applications submitted to minimum wage retail and fast food chains. So my job was to call people looking for work, and I used a script to try and convince them to come in for a tour. And we used a technique that they at one point had dubbed the pain funnel, where you would guilt trip someone with all the poor decisions they had made in their life. Why do you think you cannot find a job? How many children do you have? Don't you want to be able to better support your children? Don't you want to be a good role model for your children? Now, we weren't actually allowed to talk about the programs offered, and we had to make 100 phone calls a day, and they had a system to track those calls, so you couldn't just call your cell phone every day and keep hanging up. And most of the people I talked to had been getting phone calls every day for months. And a lot of people were harassed so much that they disconnected their phone numbers. And I kept a list of those. Now, we didn't sell loans. We just used Social Security numbers to steal government funding. When a student came in for a tour, the goal was to have their financial aid packaged before they walked out of the building, and our financial aid department was known for forging documents. So yeah, there's a lot of funding out there for people, for everyone really. And the only thing they need to do is to pass like a basic competency test to demonstrate that they're literate and capable of 8th grade math. But ITT Tech would target mentally handicapped people who would fail the test. So management would alter the score so we could still enroll them. A lot of our students were homeless. A lot of them were ex-cons. We placed teenage women into classrooms with 50-year-old convicted sex offenders and violent schizophrenics who were crawling with so many bed bugs it led to multiple outbreaks on campus. We had students arrested in class after committing homicides and violent rapes right before coming to school, and the school would cover it all up. And then there's open enrollment. We were legally allowed to enroll students for the first 2 weeks of every quarter. So if a student came to class, he came for a tour, he was walked straight to a class. So that's when the school could start charging him. And to keep students coming every day for the first 2 weeks, they would offer free food, cheap crap like hot dogs and pizza. Most of our students were African American, many of them Muslim, and the school would serve pork hot dogs because they were cheaper than beef and not tell the students. They would enroll about triple the capacity of the school, knowing that 80% of them would drop out like immediately after those first 2 weeks, but that would still get them $5 grand from the federal government. I never enrolled a single student. I wanted to quit every day, but I couldn't afford to. I used all of my vacation time and sick time interviewing for other jobs while actively trying to get fired, but my boss's goal was to make me quit. You have to understand, my boss was a former Marine Sergeant Gunner. ITT Tech only hired former military for management roles because good soldiers follow orders no matter what, and he was a really scary and intimidating guy. He took out the walls of my cubicle so I had no privacy. He lengthened everyone's hours and took away their breaks and blamed me for it in email blasts. And I had to work more late nights than anyone else. I was often alone in the building, and so on those nights I would drink and raid the financial aid department's cabinets, taking documents that I could hand over to state and federal agencies, proving all of the fraudulent practices, while I worked with a major New York law firm to build a class action lawsuit. I would also piss in the corner of my boss's office every night, just enough so that there was a constant whiff, but not enough so that you could actually track the source. And my boss would call me into his office every day to yell and threaten me, and every morning I prayed was the morning he was gonna fire me. And finally, 2 fucking years later, he calls me in, And he leaves the door open to make a public example out of me, and he says that they had developed a new system for tracking phone numbers. They could determine what phone numbers were being called and how often, and he threw down a stack of pages, and he said, these are the phone numbers that you have been calling for the past year. You want to tell me anything about them? I said, I called the numbers you gave me. He said, well, you've been calling the same phone numbers over thousands of fucking times. Actually, there's 100 numbers to be exact. You call the same 100 phone numbers every day, and every single one of them has been disconnected for the entire year that you've been calling them. I've been sitting here watching and listening to you have fake conversations with no one on the other end. I had been caught, and all I could do was smile. And I knew he wanted to slug me, and I wished he would so that I could watch him go to jail before I sued that place out of fucking existence. It took a whole nother week before security walked me out of the building, and I got my unemployment, which they took me to court for until I found an attorney with a very public history of fighting for-profit colleges, so they didn't show up to the hearing. Now, I still pass that campus every morning on my way to my new job, and when I see those closed signs in the windows, I just get all warm and fuzzy inside. Thank you.